Hello, welcome back. It's week 48 on Out on That Line. I'm Geoff with my co-host Alex. As always, Alex, how you doing this week?
Geoff, I'm doing great, but you know what we never do? I never ask you how you're doing. Checking in with you, Geoff.
Oh, life is terrible.
I
Can't
know.
believe I have to go through this pain every day. I've gone 48 weeks of this podcast without my podcast co-host asking me how I was doing, and finally, the floodgates can open. How much time do you have? I'm going to just lay down on this couch here.
Well, I will remind you, I'm a narcissistic little witch, so...
Well, lucky for you, most of my problems have to do with you.
Oh, good.
So as a narcissist, this should be good for both of us.
Oh, excellent. I'm going to feel great about this.
Well, we have quite an album to go over this
Yeah.
week. Much awaited album by Modest Mouse called The Golden Casket. And I believe you went and saw them recently, right?
No, I did not.
You did not go to that show.
I had the opportunity to, and as soon as Tanner was like, they're going to play a lot of the songs off the new album, I was like, just weird time and a place for me. I'd rather like listen to this album than go stand and be like, oh, I vaguely recognize these 8 songs that they've done.
Fair? That's
You know?
fair. Yeah, that's fair. I feel like that's the case with a lot of bands that I've seen, and I didn't necessarily keep up with their newest stuff. And then you go to the show and you hear a lot of the newer stuff, and it's like you're a big fan of them, but then you don't know those songs that well, and it's a weird spot to be. So I get it.
Yeah, and it's a great thing that people like Dr. Dog, who are splitting up soon, and SZA, they give you an album in 2018 and you still don't have another one in 2021. So you just have to listen to the classics. Pretty convenient.
I saw Dr. Dog at the Life is Good festival in wherever it was in Massachusetts, somewhere just outside of Boston. But saw Jason Mraz and Ben Harper
Oh
as
boy.
well there. I mean, it was pretty cool, but Dr. Dog, I remember, it was the most memorable one. I mean, they played like a daytime show. They weren't that big, but they were good. They were really awesome.
Oh, they're super awesome. I love their music, and yeah, they're on a split ski tour. They're gonna be done soon.
Well, I feel like that they'll probably get back together. When bands do that sort of thing where they're like, we're taking a break, they're getting ahead of where there might be actual problems, So I think that'd be a good thing.
Yeah, and
They'll
that way
probably come back.
the door's always open. It's kind of nice when it's not a acrimonious split like Jellyfish or the Beatles.
Yeah, and it's nice that they're going to leave the door open because
Oh,
Silk Sonic. Do you like how I did that?
damn, Geoff.
That was a segue if I've ever heard one.
I didn't want to blow up your spot by laughing, but it literally took my breath away.
Well, Silk Sonic has announced that they are delaying their much anticipated album until January of 2022.
Was there any reason given for why that is?
I think it's just that they're not ready to do it. I don't think there's really anything holding it back other than maybe some like business and marketing bullshit. Maybe that we're headed into another wave of this pandemic. I don't know, but it just sucks because I was really looking forward to that album.
Me too. God damn. I mean, I guess it's still coming. It's not like it's canceled, but
Yeah.
and I'm not saying this is the case with Silk Sonic, but Kanye West has burned us 3 times on Donda now, and he pretty much has to deliver on dropping it ASAP, or I'm not going to fucking give a shit. I'm not going to listen.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, we could say as two people that we're not going to listen as some sort of stand, but there's going to be millions and millions of people that don't do the same thing. So many people are waiting for this, and he's having another listening party in Chicago, I think at Soldier Field.
Yeah, yep.
And he's just going to tweak it until it comes out. It's going to be, he's got to just do it.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the old Danish proverb, the dog circles many times before it takes a shit. But at some point, you have to take the shit and release the album. I like Kanye West. I'm looking forward to hearing this. But goddamn, if you turn this into another, the Black album that Prince did, where it's like, no, the album's cursed, I'm not going to release it. Then you release it years later after the build-up, and you're like, this is what you, didn't want to unleash on the public? So,
Yeah.
just put it out there and let people have the reaction they're going to have, Kanye.
Yeah, it's either going to be, like an 808s and Heartbreaks level classic album or a My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy level classic from him, or it's going to be absolute garbage.
Ugh.
And just the way that he's recording it, if people aren't aware, he's like rented out space in the stadium, I think in Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
And
Mercedes-Benz
he's
Superdome.
living, he's living at the stadium to like make this album. You know, he's got a little like cubicle set up for a bedroom in some like little side closet or something like that. And this is where he's recording the album. He's making everybody that comes in and works with him on it all wear like costumes and stuff like that. And it's just, at what point, like, do they realize that this album is going to be so great and they're like, we're doing whatever we can to make sure we're involved in it and we don't care what it takes? Or like, are they going to hit a point where they realize that it's going to really suck and they're sitting there in an Ninja Turtle costume and they're like, what the fuck? Where the fuck is my life gone wrong?
Well, that's the thing, is there's some behind the scenes intel where a couple people, and I can't name them unfortunately, but a couple people that had heard it were like, it's a fucking mess. It's a big mess. So it's like, I don't know if it's a mess in terms of like the production or just the content. Like, it's in a complete form and he's still tinkering, but it's terrible and it's almost finished state. Or if it's a mess as in it just hasn't been put together yet. It's still just loose ideas and no production, and he's moving in too many different directions that he hasn't sat down and fine-tuned it. Like, I have no idea. Is he tinkering too much or has he not done enough? What state is this?
Who knows? I'm hoping it ends up being like a Bob Ross painting, where it's like you watch The Joy of Painting, you're watching this episode and you're like, what the fuck is this guy doing? What is this mad genius doing on this canvas? And all it looks like is just a bunch of paint scraped around because he paints with those knives, you know? But then, bam, all of a sudden you see it. All of a sudden it's just like unbelievable what he's just done in 15 minutes. You're like, how the hell does someone go from a blank canvas to like the most beautiful landscape I've ever seen? Maybe that's the case with this album, is he's at the point in the episode of The Joy of Kanye where you don't recognize what's coming. And then all of a sudden he's going to like hit that space bar or something like that, or put that extra instrument in the mix, and all of a sudden it's going to make sense. I hope it's going to be like that, and not that he's just wasted a ton of people's time, including his own.
Yeah, and I haven't heard anything like from the Donda listening events that he's done, the first two, and I don't know if that's because I'm lazy or if these people were forced to sign an NDA. That's what I would do. I'd be like, small group. If you're, it's not really open to the public. It's open to the brain trust. If you're coming, you sign this and you promise you're not going to say shit about it because it's going to influence the way that it's seen. It already has. The fact that I've like read tweets that are like, uh-oh, people are really worried about Donda. It creates a whole different narrative.
Yeah, and like, what do you even do? Because this album comes out. You're a Kanye fan. Do you just automatically find a way to like it? Or are you willing to, if he comes out with another bomb, are you willing to just write Kanye off for a while until he like gets it together and starts making, you know, my beautiful dark twisted fantasy and like 808s and heartbreaks and like that kind of level of music again?
I mean, yeah, I think it's kind of lame to enjoy someone as an artist and talk yourself into liking something shitty they did. It's like patriotism. Patriotism doesn't mean you blindly defend your country no matter what they do. It's having the courage to criticize your country because you love it so much. So, like, if you really give a shit about Kanye West, don't just, like, take it and be like, I have to like it because part of my identity is wrapped up in liking Kanye.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'd say you're a real fan if you go, this was dog shit. And maybe Kanye and I will spend a little time apart, and I'll keep my finger on the pulse, and when he comes back with something else, do this dance again. But until then, Kanye, you are on double secret probation.
I really hope that for music's sake that it's another classic.
Me too.
I hope that he's just doing his mad genius thing, you know, because his track record is far more hits than misses, you know. So it's, you know, we're sitting here kind of wondering how good this album is going to be when his track record has been that he is one of the premier artists in music today and has been for like 15 years now, you know. So I think it's I think it's good to give them the benefit of the doubt with a healthy bit of skepticism about where this thing is going, given that you haven't heard a lot of good news about it. All you keep hearing is that he's not done yet. Yeah. And when artists try too hard and tinker too much, rarely does that work out for the better.
That's very true. And like the label had to come rip SZA's debut album out of her hands, so maybe someone just needs to be like level with him. Kanye, you're done. We got to put it out. And not even for like financial reasons, but you'll destroy yourself if you don't just release this in some form or another.
He is Eddie from Eddie and the Cruisers. This is his Seasons in Hell.
On the dark side.
We got to find those tapes.
We still got to do that episode.
Oh, we do. I'm ready to watch that movie again. I don't care. I'll watch that movie every week.
Out on that line, watch along. That'd be fun.
Yeah, you just surprise me when you decide you want to talk about it. We get in here for the recording and say, I know we said we were going to do this album, but instead we're doing Eddie and the Cruises.
Okay. That sounds like a
start
hell
out,
of a
just
plan.
be like, we're not just talking Jersey, Geoff. We're doing Eddie and the Cruisers this week.
I like it. I'm definitely going to do that. You know I love chaos. I serve the god of chaos, so absolutely.
Chaos is a ladder, especially in the podcast world, so let's do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All these people are getting jobs, going back to work, dropping their podcasts. We're just going to keep trucking.
It's a
war of attrition.
Sucker's errand, and there's one born every minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Well, shall we move on?
I think so.
Okay. Was that so you had said you wanted to have a discussion topic. Was Kanye the discussion topic?
It actually wasn't, but we filled up a good
Okay.
amount of time in this beginning,
Well,
so
fuck it. Let's do it.
well, okay.
What do you got? Yeah.
Well, I guess I want to start by offering you the opportunity, because we're such good friends. I want to offer you the opportunity to walk away from the podcast now, maintaining the podcast IP and all of the rights and privileges therein, and you go find a new co-host. Because I don't know if you know this, Geoff. I got the stink on me. I have been canceled.
Oh, no. What happened?
Apparently, I am a sexist because I don't like Taylor Swift.
Who said that? Was
Okay.
it me? Was I drunk?
Let me walk you down the memory lane. So I went on a couple dates with a woman in New York City. Big time Swiftie. Should have been my first red flag.
Should have been the only one you needed.
Pretty much. The minute it didn't just come on Spotify and have her be like, oh, I like this song. Like the fact that it's like, wait a minute. It's like a horror movie. You realize, oh, all of these songs are Taylor Swift songs. And she knows every word. And then you look and there's Taylor Swift posters and a Taylor Swift Barbie and a lock of Taylor Swift's hair. And you're like, oh, no, I've done it again. So big time Swiftie. And we never really got into it because I never saw her again. Pandemic, and that was that. Texted me out of the blue the other day, and I remember just offhand being like, hey, I got to text you back later. I'm driving and listening to Olivia Rodrigo. And she was like, oh, Olivia Rodrigo is great. She's kind of the new, like, the passing of the torch from Taylor Swift.
Oh, no.
And I said, well, you know what? Agree to disagree. I think she's the first Olivia Rodrigo. And to be honest with you, and this why I did this, why I'm such a stupid boy, I have no idea. But I said, well,
Glutton for punishment.
I actually don't like Taylor Swift. Cringe emoji. And this woman is a lawyer. So immediately it becomes the people's court, and she's going to defend Taylor Swift. And we're off to the races. I shit you not. 90-minute conversation about Taylor Swift and her trying to legalese me into saying Taylor Swift is the best musical artist who has ever lived. And the reason I got called a sexist, because I buried the lead enough, but I'm a sexist because her argument was Taylor Swift writes about like deeply private sexual and romantic experiences, and as a, and quote, literal child was slut-shamed by the mainstream media. can you think of anyone else that's ever undergone that? And I said, I don't know, Madonna? And then she called Madonna a slut. She's like, well, Madonna is a slut, and that's just what she does. But Taylor Swift isn't a slut. Yeah. Just get ready for it. And she's like, name someone who's had it harder than Taylor Swift for the way she's been persecuted. Who has wanted Taylor Swift to succeed? What other artists have people wanted to succeed less than the people that don't want Taylor Swift to succeed? And I said, I don't know, Beyonce? Because she's not just a woman, she's a black woman? So I stick my neck out for Madonna and Beyonce. And when she realizes that she's not going to get me to say I appreciate Taylor Swift in any way, she goes, I think the argument needs to end here. I'm detecting some sexist undertones in your argument.
Sexist undertones. Should have been like, no, those are overtones. Like, I don't know what you were reading in this.
Yeah, at which point
but
did
I
you
hate
think...
her because she's a woman.
Exactly. I bulletin, newsflash, white women, you guys are out. You are on the permanent shit list.
Yeah.
There is a theory in fourth wave feminism that white women can't be feminists. How do you guys like that?
Fourth wave? We're up to fourth wave now. How
do you like that a man just mansplained feminism to you?
Oh my God. You did, though.
This is layers. There's layers to this.
This is unprecedented.
Because you know what? She's not wrong. I'm slipping to plenty of sexist jokes and shit like that, I'm sure. Things I'm not aware of. But this was not one of them. So if you're going to take me down for one of my crimes, make it a crime that I did. Take me down.
And, you know, I feel like it's not, like, we don't have to, like, defend ourselves by saying what other female artists we listen to and be like, hey, that's, you know, we can't be sexist because of that. You know, I'm not going to pull that card because that's a dumb card. It's just like, I listen to a lot of music by both men and women and everything in between. And I don't care who it comes from. If it's good, it's good. That's why we've talked about Olivia Rodrigo and raved about that album. Dua Lipa raved about that album. We've listened to Sturgill Simpson, raved about his stuff. You know, it's like we listen to everything. Casey Musgraves is probably one of the best reviewed albums on this entire podcast in the entire history. And that was our first episode.
Yeah.
We let off with her and Margot Price, you know, and I think I don't know. I think we're very fair when it comes to music. Maybe we're a little hard on Taylor Swift but I feel like the stature versus what I think the quality of the music is, that's why it gets under my skin so much that she's been so successful, because I just think it's like lowest common denominator stuff. Like, you're going to say the most basic things you can so that people can relate to it. And because they relate to it, they're going to think that they're more intelligent for doing so. And they're automatically going to elevate you so that they elevate themselves while they do it. You know, and that's my issue with that kind of music, is it doesn't feel that personal to me. It feels like it's kind of just, you know, pandering to a demographic of people that are going to cry along with it. And because they relate to it, they're going to think it's the greatest art of all time. And they can love it. That's fine. But I don't love it. And I am fine with that too.
Well, and that your point that you made is well met, which is this, you know, if the music is good, it doesn't matter who it came from. But the music ain't good. Taylor Swift sucks the bag. Her music isn't deep. I'm sorry. And I stick by my original premise that I had in the argument with her, which is, if you want to say who has contributed more to musical culture, who was actually a trailblazer, who set the stage for Taylor Swift to come in and reap all the benefits in the 2010s and 2020s, I maintain Madonna took the fucking laid on the grenade for slut shaming and sexism and misogyny. Beyonce laid on the grenade for the fucking racist aspects on top of all of the sexism. Like, and I don't mean to be pandering to say that. Like, this is how people tie you up in knots. Because the second I started saying that shit, I'm like, I'm sorry if I think Beyonce and Madonna went through way worse and actually legitimately blazed a trail, and Taylor Swift got to walk in and, again, reap all the benefits. But apparently that was sexist. So
look what Britney Spears is going through right now.
Oh, yeah. I brought her up, too.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, and not, I feel like, again, we're getting pigeonholed into, like, comparing traumas here, you know? But which I don't think is ever good, because it's all relative to everybody, to each individual person, like how severe a trauma is. But I don't think it's fair to say that Taylor Swift had it worse than anybody when you can name some very clear examples of some people that had it pretty fucking bad, you know? And I don't think it's fair to like basically negate their experiences, you know, and say that Taylor had it, who had it worse. It's like, well, how can you really say that? She had it bad for her, like in comparison to what she thinks she should be dealing with. What she went through was awful, sure. And that's personal for everybody, you know, but look at, like, we see clearly what Britney Spears has gone through, what Madonna went through back in the day, what Beyonce went through in like the early 2000s and dealing with this stuff. And it's like many, many other people have dealt with this. And it's not really fair to say she's like the torch carrier on pain and trauma.
No, music did not begin when Taylor Swift entered the industry, which was like kind of her argument in a weird way. And again, it is about the quality of the music. I said that to lead off. First of all, fat mouth, I shouldn't have said shit. But I led off, I was like, hey, don't necessarily have a problem with her as a human being. I don't like the music. So no, I would not take away Taylor Swift's traumas. I wouldn't compare traumas, all that stuff. But if you're looking at the journey of the artist, like as pure data, like watching a career rise from the outside in, other people have had to overcome pretty significant obstacles, and Taylor Swift has had to struggle too. But again, none of that makes the music good, and that was the point, is the music sucks the bag. I hate it, and I hate it more now that I've been forced to articulate why I hate it. So thank you for forging my beliefs in the crucible of your bullshit.
All right. Well, I think we got our point across.
Hopefully.
About how we feel about that situation. And let us know, listeners, how you feel about that situation, because we're always fine to argue, and we're happy we get to have very one-sided arguments on this podcast, because if we don't like your argument, we're not going to bring you on. But if you agree with us, we're happy to read those notes on the air. So go ahead and send us an email.
Absolutely. Glad handing is the lifeblood of this podcast.
Yes, absolutely. We're great at politics, especially when they favor us. Well, what do you think about getting into this Modest Mouse album?
Let's do it.
All right. So Modest Mouse just came out with the album in June, actually, the end of June, called The Golden Casket. And how long had it been since their last one? A few years, right?
That's a great question.
Like 5 years?
It's been a while.
I think it was like 5 years. But they're an extremely popular indie band. If you've never heard the song Float On, you probably haven't been listening to music at all in the last like 15 years. That song absolutely blew up, took over the world. They'd had several hits after that one. If you listen to like alternative rock stations, Modest Mouse has been a very, very popular band for a long time. And this album was, people were waiting for this one, you know, and especially because there's some Modest Mouse diehards. I wouldn't consider myself a diehard. I do like a lot of their music. I've liked just about everything I've heard. There's very few songs that I've heard by them like, don't really care. But Black Cadillacs, great song. We've been listening to that one, you, me, and Rory, and everybody else for years and years now. I mean, that's an incredible song. Float On, great song.
Invisible, that was another staple of our group.
Mm-hmm.
You're not
World
invisible
at Large.
inside your car.
Yeah, I mean, they've had a lot of hits, you know, and a lot of stuff I've really enjoyed. So I was looking forward to this album. So when you texted me about listening to this one, I was like, perfect, let's do it. And so we picked our 6 songs, and, you know, I just want to know what made you want to do this one this week. What all of a sudden was the impetus for this one?
It was definitely Tanner going to see them, and he was like, hey man, do you want to go to the show with me and Anna and like see Modest Mouse? And I was just like, what I said at the beginning, I haven't heard the new album. I don't think I'd get anything out of it if it's heavily Golden Casket. Mm-hmm. So, again, I can't claim to be the biggest Modest Mouse diehard, but for everything you articulated, we collectively enjoy them. So I was like, all right, fuck it. Let's rectify this. Let's force both of us to listen to this one.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed it. You know, I think there was a lot of stuff on here that was really classic Modest Mouse, and there was a lot of new stuff on here. You know, I think what they've always done with all their albums is, you know, they just kind of throw some new stuff in there. They're just they don't really pigeonhole themselves. You know, like Black Cadillac sounds like a completely different song than Float On does. You know, they've always done that sort of thing, where it's very much like the same way Death Cab starts out from like, we have the facts and we're voting yes, and the songs about airplanes, and songs you can play with chords. Those are albums that, like, from those up until like Plans and Narrow Stairs, it's like they had this crazy advancement where they were almost unrecognizable, but if you listen to it all the way through, you could kind of track that growth all the way through. And I think it's the same with Modest Mouse as I've listened to them throughout the years. And I think this album was probably had the most like aggression that I've heard out of Modest Mouse and in any songs. Kind of the most like just musical variation, I think, just as far as like the instruments used and the production style, it just seemed a little different from all the rest of them. So I thought it was a very interesting listen all the way through.
A deep and abiding cynicism. I get that that's not new for Modest Mouse or for Isaac Brock, our lead singer friend. But it really, like, it was a combative cynicism. And I don't mean that as a negative. The album came out swinging. It again, like, I was a little worried when the first song, Fuck Your Acid Trip, started. I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. And I started tapping my foot, like, getting anxious. I'm like, oh, God. This is like the best parts of Modest Mouse have kind of been stripped away and like replaced with something generic. But as soon as you move through the album, you're like, oh, that was the point. Yep. He meant to do that because this whole thing is about crass consumerism. And like, once you've had it all, where do you go from there? And so I don't know. Again, it was one of those things where it's like the album outsmarted me and I had to keep going back to it and be like, okay. Now I see what's happening. I'm the asshole.
Yeah. And it was, I like how you put that the album outsmarted me, because it certainly did to me. Because you go in expecting Black Cadillacs and Float On and The World at Large, and all these songs that you're used to hearing from Modest Mouse. You're not used to hearing, pretty much right off the bat. Like, I'm not used to hearing them be that aggressive. I've heard them be angry, but that outright, like, just rage, I'd never really heard. It was almost like that real punk sensibility had creeped into Modest Mouse, and it was cool to hear because you got to hear that they were capable of it. And so you got to appreciate the musical talent it takes to kind of go that different direction. And you have to respect the writing ability. There's some songs that I think were just, to me, they were total nonsense as far as the lyrics go. But you understand what the point of them is. The words, like, all, like, one by one don't mean anything, but when you take it as a whole, you understand exactly what they're trying to do. And it's one of the songs that you picked, actually, and we'll get into that.
Yeah.
But the first song I picked on here was Wooden Soldiers. And this was the one that I immediately thought, I was like, has Modest Mouse ever sounded this, like, scuzzy? And like, I don't know if I can really explain that term, but just like the really kind of heavily distorted guitars and, just that really low end kind of drag on the music the whole time. It's like, that's that kind of scuzzy sound that you would think you're going to hear like in a dark alley in New York City or something like that. It's just like something that's foreboding. It's just a very kind of off-putting sort of noise in it. And I really like you brought up, they talk about consumerism all the time. Making plans in the sands as the tides roll in is like one of the main lines in this song. And it's just this idea that it's like you can have all these thoughts and all these plans about what you're going to do, but as soon as something bad happens, it's just going to wash them all away. You're just going to have to throw them to the side and start over, and I think that's a thought that he goes back to constantly on this album. And I really, really like this song. And this was the one that the first 4 songs, really, or first 5 songs or whatever it is on the album before this one, like, I liked them, but it wasn't until this song that I was like, okay, now I really see what they're doing with this album. And I was able to, from here, really dig into it and really kind of get a good understanding of what he was trying to tell me.
That's exactly where it clicked for me too. The 4th song in Walking and Running was where I was like, okay, this is turning a corner. And then Wooden Soldiers came on. I'm like, okay, all right, exactly. It recontextualized the whole album for me. It's a step up. The whole thing from Fuck Your Acid Trip on is a step up. With lots of fun twists and turns. And this song to me was quintessential Modest Mouse. Like, the sound was back. The sound that was kind of missing up to that point in the other songs crystallized perfectly on this song. But again, it didn't sound like, well, we're totally going back to the well. It kept that kind of like modern production polish. And like you said, it's scuzzy, but scuzzy achieved through technical excellence. That's the polish. So it's not a clean, glossy sound. It's fucking ugly, but it is quintessentially Modest Mouse. And like you said, it's lyrics that operate in the same way as Nirvana. Kurt Cobain knew what he was singing about. You might look at the lyrics and go, I don't know, but he knew. It's the opposite of Dave Grohl, who just goes, yeah, that sounds good together.
Yeah.
Rock on, brosif. Like, fuck you.
Oh, man. I wouldn't even... I don't know. I've seen a lot of stuff about Dave Grohl recently because they're getting ready to go on tour in the UK, and he's just like, oh, we're treating every day like it's the last. I was like, please let it be one of these days. Please. Stop teasing us, Dave.
What do you know that we don't, Dave? Oh, fuck.
Well, yeah, so Wooden Soldier's a great, even though it was a few songs into the album, a really great introduction to, I think, what the rest of the album is going to be like. And we kind of pick songs all right in the middle chunk of the album. So, I think that speaks to that album synchronization, the sequencing. I think that speaks to that. Is like if the two of us immediately had such a strong reaction to that middle chunk of songs that we decided those were the ones we were going to pick. I think he accomplished exactly the goal he was trying to do with those songs, and having your beginning, your middle, and your end. And maybe the songs aren't connected story-wise, but there is that overarching theme, consumerism, growing up, like being an older adult versus, 5 years ago when you were still young and angry and lashing out. Now it's just you've got this cynicism has settled in. That boiling rage has turned into just kind of a simmering discontent with the world around you, So moving into the next song, Transmitting, Receiving, this was one of the ones that you picked.
Yeah, this was like a schizophrenic version of We Didn't Start the Fire. It was just like absolute nonsense words in terms of the way that they were juxtaposed. Cheeseburger, turtle, headscarf, like just yelling shit out, just conjuring images. And it really did, like, I'm not throwing schizophrenic around glibly because it really did have that feel. This is such a weird thing to say, but I tried a schizophrenia simulator once to try to like experience what that would be like.
Whoa.
It's a fucking I cannot imagine living like that. It seems like untreated. It's a nightmare. And I got flashbacks to the simulator from this song because there's two competing streams of thought that are really hard to extricate. If you look at the lyrics on Genius, there's the main lyrics, and then stuck in there are the ones from this other voice. But the way they run into and over each other, it just turns into this tangle and it assaults you, and it's like really upsetting. So I can't imagine if it had lyrics you need to pay attention to over it. I'd curl up in a fucking ball and fall over. But it's like a really crazy stream of consciousness, psychedelic masterpiece. This is the one I listened to where I was like, this is my hands down favorite. It's so fucking weird. It does that thing I love where they go out on a fucking limb, and they succeeded with flying colors.
Yes. And this was pretty close to being one of my picks. But I think what I liked most about it is, like you were saying, it's like two songs in one. The way that it's structured. You could have left either sets of those lyrics out and done those separately as another song, and it would have worked just fine. But I think that's the idea, because the kind of song in the shadows on this one. So you have, horses, wagons, aeroplanes, cars, bathtubs, into drains. It's like those are the kind of lyrics that make up the majority of the song that you hear. But then there's these lines, well, nothing in this world is going to petrify me. We are repeating, we are transmitting, we are receiving. We are repeating, we are transmitting, we are receiving. Those are the lyrics to that kind of song in the shadows. And it's this idea that you've got all these physical, consumerist goods, that these broader thoughts and these things where, you think about more than a step in front of your face. When you think about things a little deeper, that's all getting blocked by the more and more and more and more that we have in the world, the more there is to distract you from connecting with yourself and, the rest of humanity and, nature generally around you. It's those things that kind of block us in and stop us from experiencing what a lot of folks would say life is supposed to be about, which is human connection and enlightenment and understanding what your purpose is here and making sure that it's left better than when you found it. And all of these things in this song, I think, are things that he just probably happened across in his life. And he's like, we don't need that. There's a few things that in there that are like kind of necessities, but like most of the stuff is like, well, we could get by without these things. And these are the things that are blocking us from connecting with this other song in the shadows that I'm trying to put across.
I think technology really fucked him up. I think on a philosophical level, I think more than anyone that I've ever really encountered, it bothers him. It fundamentally bothers him because you can see the good in the technology. Something like the Arab Spring, right? Without that technology, how does the world find out that this is happening and try to rally around people that are fighting to experience democracy? So it's a technology that can be leveraged for good. Someone goes missing in Atlanta, Georgia, and theoretically Twitter could get whipped into a lather and find that person in record time. It can be an amazing thing, but we also just like demean each other and say our favorite celebrities are fat and post pictures of our food. And I don't even feel that cynical about it. I'm like, it is what it is. Don't act like you're better than it. You have an Instagram account and you put shit up on it. But it really, really fucking bothers Isaac Brock. It comes up a lot on this album.
Yeah. And I can understand because I have always been the one, one of the people that says just because we can doesn't mean we should. Mm-hmm. And I think about that with technology all the time. That it's like these folks are coming up with AI. You watch Boston Dynamics and these fucking robots that they're making. And it's like, oh, well, AI is going to make life easier. And it's like, no, you've seen what happened to Facebook. Whatever idyllic idea there was to start with that website has now turned into a cesspool. What Twitter was supposed to be was just like a news feed, where you're able to interact with celebrities, interact with other people and get information quicker. Has now been one of the things responsible for nearly undermining our entire democracy in this country. So what makes us think that we're going to treat AI any different than any of those things? Like you use Google and it infects every part of your technological life. It knows everything about you, but Gmail's the easiest one to use. So everybody does it. And including me, that's what our show email address is Gmail, so it's like, I can absolutely understand where he's coming from with this stuff, but it's like, how do you get by without it? Like, how do you do anything in your life without a phone these days? Like everything is check in with your phone, pay with your phone. Like you pay with your phone right on a credit card machine in a store these days. And that's not even new technology. It's just like crazy where we've gotten to and how much kind of stuff we put in between us and other people and like that connection we're supposed to have with everybody.
And that's the whole point of this. A lot of the songs on this album is you can't live without it. And he acknowledges it and he admits defeat, but it fucks him up. It is here to stay, much in the same way that COVID is here to stay. Like once the toothpaste is out of the tube, how you going to put it back? So there's a lot of that existential depression that runs through this whole album.
Yep. And it goes through once again into the next song I picked, The Sun Hasn't Left. And this one has a bit more of an uplifting message than a lot of the other songs on the album do. But I think it's less of an uplifting thing and more of like, well, as soon as it hits rock bottom, it can only go up from here. It's like, there's still a little bit of negativity with that message. It's still saying like, well, you got to go down before you go up, and it's tough to hear, but it is true. And I think the line in this song that I really, really liked is the world is a womb. It ain't just a room, and the world is a womb, meaning that's like, maybe this isn't our last stop. It's like trying to think of the bigger picture, it doesn't just all turn black and we just turn into nothing when we die, like what does happen? Is there something else worth thinking about or worth exploring? And the world is a womb, saying like this is just a stop along the way. And I love thinking like that. I think it freaks fiance of the pod Marla out to think like that. She'll have an existential crisis when I'm just like, yeah, dying's not a big deal. There's probably something else after, just is what it is, and thoughts like that don't really bother me. And I like having songs like this because I think it really dips into that. And especially lines like the world is a womb. Like it was just a very interesting way to put that.
Absolutely. And I had the same interpretation. It reminds me of season 3 of Twin Peaks. And you haven't watched it, right?
No, just first season, I think.
Okay, I'm not going to give like specific spoilers in case anybody wants to watch the show from 1989. Now that they've taken it off Netflix. But in 2017, it was season 3, Twin Peaks: The Return, exactly 25 years after season 2, which if you've watched the show, you're like, oh, very clever, because somebody promises, I'll see you again in 25 years. Promise kept. Show comes out, but a lot of the original actors were either dead or dying when they shot it. So like there's this character called the Log Lady. And if people know anything about Twin Peaks, they've probably either seen the Red Room or they've seen the Log Lady with her glasses and her weird haircut and her sweater and her log. And she is someone that David Lynch, who created Twin Peaks, worked with since they were in art school. And she was dying when they were filming her scenes for season 3. And that woman had fucking nerves of steel because she allowed David Lynch to incorporate her death and coming to terms with her own death into the show. You watch it happen. It is the most fucked up, uncomfortable, and I mean that in a complimentary way, because she fucking left it all out on the floor. She died 3 days after they shot her scenes. Whoa. She was fucked up when they did that. All of which is to say, it all crystallized in the line reading of her life. When she's talking to another guy and she says, you know about death. It's not an end. It's just a change. And that's the same sentiment as this song. And that's a powerful sentiment. It is a change no matter what. So you don't have to be afraid of it. You can lament the loss of this identity, but there could be nothing and there could be something more. Either way, it is a change.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's a good way to look at it. I'm going to probably wait till it's light outside to bring that one up to fiance of the pod.
Absolutely. Don't make her watch Twin Peaks.
Oh, she might watch it. I might get her to do it.
It's really fucking good. It's really great.
Yeah. I did enjoy it. I don't know why I stopped watching it. I think because it got to a point where I was like, wasn't paying that close of attention to it. And I know that's a show you absolutely need to pay attention to, like every last little minute detail, because that's just the way it was made. And I know I need to do it. I'm gonna do it. Okay.
Well, then I'll see you again in 25 years.
Well, let's hope it's not that long, but we'll mark the date. What is it today? The 17th, 18th of August. Okay, so 2045, 2046. We'll see you then. All right. We'll come back for episode 49 then. The next song, Lace Your Shoes. Now, this was probably the most uplifting, happy song on the album, I think. And it's about his kids. It's about Isaac Brock and his kids and how much joy and fulfillment they bring into his life. And he sings, it's just a tribute to your child. It's a little like You Are My Sunshine kind of little ditty, but done in a very Modest Mouse way. The way that he says the stuff, it's just like, I can't wait to see you lace your shoes. Things were hazy, but that all stopped with you. It's just like full admittance to the fact that he wasn't the man he wanted to be previous to this, but having a kid has made him a better man. And I think that's a sentiment that needs to get addressed more. I think it's something that's more acceptable now. But back in the day, like, it used to be pretty common that rock stars would have nothing to do with their kids. It's like you look at Steven Tyler and Liv Tyler, and I'm pretty sure she hardly ever saw him until she was a teenager. And there's so many stories like that. And it's nice to hear how dedicated he is to being a dad and still doing music as a career and not sacrificing one for the other. It seems like he's found himself a good balance of creating both.
It's the sweet spot. It's like we talked about with young Billy last week. Her life is forever altered in a massive way. But Isaac Brock and his family live in Portland, Oregon, and he gets to be involved in his children's life day to day and still play music. That's pretty fucking cool. This song is like with arms wide open if it didn't suck. You know what I mean? It's got the same
Who says
flavor.
that song sucks?
Oh, shit. I forgot you like divorced dad rock.
Oh, I sure do, buddy. It's called butt rock, okay?
Got it.
Get it right.
Remind us why it's butt rock?
Because it's always on radio stations that play nothing but rock.
Ah, there we go. There it is. I had
Yeah.
forgotten.
It's much less gross than people try to think when you say butt rock, They're like, oh, because it's shitty. It's like, no, you're not clever. That's the surface level joke. You could have reached a little deeper into that puddle for something a little better, than a poop joke. Grow up.
See, and I thought it meant that the sound originates from the butt and not as a fart, but they're singing. It sounds like they're trying really hard not to expel something. Yeah. Because there's a homegirl longing to escape. And then this also reminded me of a great, very tender Brian Wilson song, Beach Boys song, I guess, off of the Beach Boys' Love You, which I think I've talked about. Very personal album for Brian Wilson. The rest of the band rallied around him and let him kind of do whatever he wanted with this, and they were just going to meet whatever requests he had. And there's a song on it that is about like parenting his kids, and it's literally like it is like an extremely literal recounting of their daily routine, like talking about giving Carney Wilson a bath and careful not to get shampoo in your eyes. It's like very sweet. It's not like a jam, but it's a really sweet tribute to his kids to kind of let him know, you are in my thoughts. My first concern is always you, no matter what's going on with me. So same thing with this song. I didn't love listening to it as a song, but as a sentiment, it was very beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I liked it, because there was other songs that the lyrics were definitely edgier and music was a little louder, but I like this one because I think it showed a huge difference from the Modest Mouse of old. I think this was one of the songs where you really see what has happened in these last several years since they last released an album. And I think when you can still sound like yourself with all of these big life changes and be able to translate and relay those life changes to your audience, I think it shows what kind of talent you really have. And I think it's a really good representation of Modest Mouse on this album.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. And the fact that I'm in terms of, like you said, power and creativity and stuff like that, it's not receiving, transmitting, but it's still a really good song. And again, it's that quintessential circumspect Modest Mouse. So, anyway, the next song we gotta do here, because we're getting on in time. Leave a Light On. That was one of your picks, if I'm not mistaken. And I had an interesting experience with this one, but it's your pick, so I don't want to stomp all over it. You go first.
Okay, so this is one that I picked because specifically verse 2 is, I think, some of the best writing on this album, maybe some of the best that I've heard from Modest Mouse. And I'd like to read it. My friend's house is full of very, very helpful nurses. Some days they have birthdays there, and some days they have hearses. My friend's house is full of cats, but they are both allergic. Your house is inside my heart, and your heart's where my house is. And I think that is just such a simple, beautiful little 4-line verse that you're so used to hearing this off-the-wall stuff from Modest Mouse, where it's like, what does it mean? And it's just so nice to have a verse like that where it's so short and to the point and heartfelt, and just really almost like a privilege to listen to somebody put a verse together like that. It's one of those things that I think as soon as I heard it, I went back and listened to it again. And it's the one biggest part of the album that has stuck with me, is that 4-line verse.
In many ways, it's the biggest one that stuck with me too. Like, overall songs as concepts made an impact, but I think you're right. The talent and the mission is crystallized in those lines. And this is where my weird experience kicks in. I listened to that song a bunch of times, and specifically because of those lines, my interpretation of the song became, it is a song about accepting death. Because I look at those lines, there are many nurses in the home, and sometimes there are hearses talking about that, the terminality of life. You get to the end. They've got cats and they're allergic, talking about, like, I just got this image of, like, an old woman all by herself, kind of rounding that bend, her and her cats, and you love grandma and you want to go see grandma. You're terribly allergic to her cats, but that's not going to stop you, because the whole thing is about leave the light on. Mm-hmm. Leave a light on. That's the fucking, like, leave one on in your heart. You live in my heart. I'm about to lose you. I have to say goodbye to you. Eventually we say goodbye to everyone we love. And instead of being bummed the fuck out about it, I will leave a light on for you. You will always live in me. And I hope that if I happen to go before you, that I live in you. And it's about being welcoming and being able to be welcomed. That was my interpretation. It was sort of about accepting mortality. Mm-hmm. And again, a beautiful message compared to some of the other things on this album. But then I decided to look at the liner notes and see what was said about it. And apparently it is just a song inspired by the pandemic, where it's, like, very literal about homes. His whole thing was like, we spent the whole pandemic looking at the walls of our own living rooms, but everyone else's living room is new to somebody. And that's what I was trying to convey, is just like, we can all experience each other's, a little bit of each other's home in our hearts. And I was like, well, fuck me, I guess I'm just the guy that interprets sex and death in every song that I hear.
That's like the opposite of Why'd the Chicken Cross the Road to get to the other side. It's like the exact opposite. This is one that you read, and I felt exactly the same way you did about this one. It was like they're talking about, like, a nursing home or like an assisted living kind of situation, where it's like there's residents and sometimes they have birthdays and sometimes they don't have any more birthdays. It's just like that kind of thing where it's like, why'd the chicken cross the road? Some people don't understand that's an extremely morbid joke, where the chicken walks out into the road to die and go to the other side, meaning the afterlife. And it's like, you think something that innocent and it's got that deep a meaning. This song is supposed to have that deep of a meaning and is totally innocent. It's the complete polar opposite situation here. And I got to say, I'm a little disappointed to know that. Mm-hmm. Got to be honest with you. It takes a little wind out of my sails on this song.
Did I burst that for you?
A little bit, yeah.
Oh, shit, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're holding the pin right now. You're the guilty party.
Oh, shattering the grand illusion. I hate that.
Well, that's fine. Let's just move on to Back to the Middle. The last song on the album, also your last pick.
Oh, okay. So I just want to lead off with the drums on this get an A+ from me.
Oh, yeah.
Super fucking creative. As a result of my friendship with friend of the pod, Tanner, I'm becoming more and more aware of, like, what is difficult drumming, what is difficult for difficult sake, and what is challenging but really, really good. And that was the drums on this song. All over the place, but in a pattern that if you're good enough, you can follow. Like, very Stuart Copeland kind of syncopated shit. So that was, like, the big kudos that I wanted to give this song.
Yes. And I thought this one was the best that, like, Death Cab ever did on, like, Narrow Stairs or Codes and Keys, where they really can get to rocking. Or they even did it on, like, We Laugh Indoors as well, where Death Cab really gets cooking, and they become like a rock band and not just like a dream pop indie band. I really, really like this song for exactly that reason, because they get cooking. And the line where he says, "Our head is a cage and the parrot loves to talk," is like just talking about overthinking and it's just like the parrot, your brain, just like talk, 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 just overthinking everything. And I think that's just such a clever way to say that.
Yeah, it's great, and it's the parallel to, I mean, the whole album being called the Golden Casket, right? The parallel of the gilded cage where you can have it all, but you are a prisoner of your own. Billie Eilish, I dare say, is forced to live in a gilded cage. You've got everything you could have ever wanted, but it came at a horrible price.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, to take the leap then to this very morbid themes that run through this album called the Golden Casket, it's as if to say, like, all of this bounty is killing us and is killing me. And it's the chronic overthinking. Information is so readily available. The way that we have social relationships has changed because of social media. It changed drastically during the pandemic. And part of that was polarization. We've never been more polarized, specifically in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And Back to the Middle is literally about that. And not in a political way, but just in an existential way. We've been disrupted, and we need to find our way back together. Because the alternative is this technology that should be bringing us together is going to be the death of us. So, I don't know. I thought, theme stated, as we say in screenwriting.
Yes. And talking about bringing it home on the last song of the album, this is a great one.
Yeah.
And I think where a lot of albums will just kind of take it easy on the way out, just like kind of lead you back down. This one just like leaves you with a few more questions, leaves you with wanting to think a little more about the things that he's talked about. And generally, I'm a big fan of the ones that kind of ease their way out. Just kind of like you're getting to the end of the slide, you're starting to slow down, get back on your feet, and just walk away, And I think this one makes you stop and think about it a little more, because I think you do get some very personal things, that don't necessarily, if they resonate with you, they'll stick with you. But, if you don't have a kid, a song about having a kid is not going to really do a whole lot for you generally. But a song like this, where it's like everybody understands the issues that technology and consumerism and this disconnect that we have from each other these days, how big of a problem that's becoming. And I think nobody has the right answer for how to fix it. I think if somebody did, we'd already be past this, but things keep happening to make it worse. It's like already technologically, you could say whatever you wanted to whoever you want and do it anonymously online, and that itself, I think, adds a lot of problems because now people are not having to use the filter of like, is this okay to say in public or not? Because they can just do it without any sort of consequence. And now we've had this pandemic, which has kept everybody at home. So the only way to communicate was this way that was already driving us apart. And I think it's just this, kind of continuation of these problems. And he's one of the people that realizes that something has to change and quickly, or we're going to be past the point of no return with this stuff. And I think he asked a lot of really interesting questions on this one. I think he's like we are and doesn't really have the answers. He just knows something has to change. He knows what is causing the problems, but how to fix those problems is escaping him.
Yeah, and I think that, again, the album reads simultaneously as an admission of defeat, a complaint, a plea. I mean, it operates on a lot of levels where it's not taking a firm stance like, let's all get together and do Hands Across America and that'll fix everything. It's more admitting exactly what you said. I don't have an answer. Nobody does, or we'd be over it. But these are questions we need to ask. These are discussions we need to have because we have to acknowledge this is happening to us and not let it become the norm. Because once we fall apart, there's no gluing us back together again. Think of any apocalyptic novel where people bust back into tribes and we get back into toxic tribalism and we can't relate to one another anymore. That'll be the undoing of us as a country and as a society when we can't value each other's worth and humanity and learn to communicate again. So again, big thanks from Modest Mouse, packaged in a way where, like I said, the album outsmarted me, because at first I was like, this is commercial bullshit. And then as each song went along and got stronger and stronger and stronger, you realize like he wants you to feel that anger, that complaint that like, oh, Modest Mouse got complacent. Fuck that. No, they didn't. They were just trying to prove a point. And to me, point proven. And I'm going to say stream it.
Yes, absolutely stream it on this one. If you've been one of those folks waiting for the next Modest Mouse album, and I can't say I was like hotly anticipating this one. You know, I was happy when I heard it was coming out. Cause like, haven't heard anything new from them in a while. So I was excited. But absolutely stream it. Absolutely go and stream this one, especially if you've liked things they've done in the past. Go ahead and listen to this one. If you haven't heard a thing that Modest Mouse has done, go ahead and listen to this one, and then go back and listen to the rest of it. Because I think if you're listening to this podcast, it's probably, and you haven't listened to Modest Mouse, they're probably a band that you're going to like. You know, they're a great rock and roll band if that's all you want to get out of it. But they have some really, really interesting ideas to talk about. And I think they're really worth exploring. And I'm glad we did this album this week. This was a really good one.
I just wish that Frank Zappa could have been alive to hear this.
Oh, man, he would have loved Modest Mouse. Or he would have hated him. Who knows what Frank would have liked.
I think, like, it's interesting. He shit on the Beatles. Like, he acknowledged their talent, but shit on their music, but was apparently, like, a closeted fan of a couple songs. But then that dream died forever because he worked on a song with John Lennon and Yoko Ono, and they stole it from him. They did not give him credit. They changed the title, and they put it on Plastic Ono Band. And he went, fuck that. And that was the final nail in the coffin for Uncle Frank. He hated David Bowie too. Like I don't know if I've told that story before. We won't get into it now, but he pretty much hates all the other people that I really, really like.
That's funny. He probably just was a little jealous of the success.
Oh, he's an iconoclast and an asshole.
Yeah. He was just too weird. That's all. Yeah.
I love you,
Frank. He's got his
Frank.
place in history. Yeah, he's got his place in history, but he was just too weird. That's all.
I keep the fire for you, Frankie.
Yeah. So, by the time you hear this on Monday, folks, there will be another singles video. You just search hashtag Out on That Line on YouTube, and you'll find that. Don't forget to subscribe. We're getting that subscriber count slowly but surely. We're climbing. And it's all thanks to folks that have already subscribed. So be one of those folks. Be among the first. So when we're blown up, and they're doing the VH1 Behind the Music about how a couple of music podcasters died in a fiery helicopter accident, you'll be able to say, hey, I listened to those guys back when they were on YouTube, back before they were getting paid for this. So go subscribe on YouTube. You'll find us on Instagram at Out on That Line. You'll find us on Twitter at Out on That Line 1. You can send us an email outonthatline@gmail.com. Alex, do you have anything else this week?
I do not. I simply have nothing more to say, and I yield the floor.
Okay. All right. Until next time.